Let's try this again. Online participants, can you hear me? Can I get a reaction? Yes, perfect. Yay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are excited to kick off this CEQA scoping meeting for revisions to the bacteria TMDLs in the San Diego region. My name is Michelle Santillan. I am a water resource control engineer in the Restoration and Protection Planning Unit, and I will be leading this project. Before we begin, just a few logistics. Bathrooms are down the hall to your left. Please help yourself to some coffee anytime throughout the meeting. Our format for today will start with a brief welcome from our executive officer, and then I'll do a short presentation, and then we will open it up for questions and discussions at the end. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it on to our executive officer, Dave Gibson.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone in the room and online. I'm Dave Gibson, the executive officer of the Water Board. Many of us know each other. I think we've all been working on this project now for a very long time. And so I think it's an opportunity for us with the CEQA scoping meeting today to kick off what I hope will be at least the final phase of this particular project. This has long been one of our top priorities in the triennial review process. And you will note that we have staff in our office who have been both in the stormwater unit and in the TMDL basin planning unit. That's intentional because we understand that the operational side of this TMDL, once it's updated, is in the stormwater permit and vice versa. So while we have staff migrations that are moving on, this is a key part of our work, and our strategy is to combine both the operational side of the office, the permitting side, and the basin planning or the water quality restoration planning side. It wouldn't be a rainy day without problems in the Tijuana River, so I won't be able to stay with you all morning, but I wanted to emphasize to you how important the board sees this, both in terms of protecting water quality for recreation, but also in terms of the municipal cost of compliance that is often reflected in the stormwater permit. So we're very happy today to start this process with you. It'll probably be a long time yet before we have a basin plan hearing in this room to adopt the resolution, but we look forward to your engagement as we go forward. I'm happy to take any short questions if there are any at the outset. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to the Michelle and team to carry us on. Any questions online? All right. Well, thank you very much. Look forward to your engagement, and do take care. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's dive right in. All right, here's what we're going to be covering today. We'll start off with the purpose of this meeting. Then we'll go over some background, the project description. I'll review CEQA requirements and the basin planning process. And then I'll end by explaining how to submit feedback and other ways to participate. So let's start with the big question. Why are we here? Our region has faced long-standing water quality challenges with elevated levels of fecal indicator bacteria, or FIB. Despite years of effort, including adopting TMDLs and partnering with stakeholders, we continue to see elevated levels of FIB in many of our water bodies. Data from special studies has given us new insight into the sources of contamination, helping us refocus our efforts. Moving forward, we're concentrating on tackling the biggest problem areas, like sewer spills and other sources of human fecal contamination. This is where CEQA scoping comes in. It helps us look at the possible environmental impacts of the actions that might need to be taken to meet the TMDL goals and figure out the best solutions. And this process starts with your feedback during scoping. This meeting is your opportunity to share ideas and feedback early in project development so that we can consider them during the environmental review. Today, our goal is to give you some background and a high-level overview of the project, and then hear your thoughts on the following 4 key areas. What actions or measures do you think are needed to meet the TMDL requirements? What environmental changes from those actions should we study? How can we reduce those impacts once they're identified? And what other strategies should the Water Board be considering? Keep in mind, CEQA scoping is about big picture ideas, not detailed project specifics. Those details will come later in the staff report and environmental analysis phase. Before we dive into the project, let's take a look at the history of the bacteria TMDLs in our region. Oops, too far. Back in 2002, we discovered that many of our water bodies had high levels of FIV, which led to beach closures and public health concerns. Since then, we've adopted TMDLs for Baby Beach and Dana Point Harbor, Shelter Island Shoreline Park in San Diego Bay, and 20 beaches and creeks across the region. These TMDLs put most of the load responsibility on the municipal separate storm sewer systems, or MS4s, because stormwater runoff was found to be a major source of bacteria. We worked closely with stakeholders, and over time, our focus began shifting towards human-related sources. Fast forward to today, we have new statewide bacteria standards, better science, and updated data that shows where the contamination is really coming from, which makes this a really good time to revisit those previously adopted TMDLs. That's why we're here, to talk about what needs to change and how we can do it together. Now, you might be wondering, why do CEQA again if it was done before? And that's a great question. The revised TMDL may include new actions or impacts that weren't previously analyzed, and CEQA requires us to review whether these changes could create significant environmental effects. Now, this isn't starting from scratch. If an impact was already studied in the past and nothing has changed, we won't reanalyze it. This helps ensure that our review reflects the latest science and any new measures. If you'd like to see the previous CEQA documents, those have been posted on the project webpage. For our online participants, we'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat. For the people here in the room, I put a couple copies here on these tables if you're interested in looking at those. Okay, now that we've looked at the history, let's look at the proposed project and updates. The project is a basin plan amendment to revise the bacteria TMDLs. Key updates include align numeric targets with statewide objectives for consistency, updating source analysis using new data collected since the previously adopted TMDLs. Recent studies show that sanitary sewer spills and issues in the collection systems are major contributors to bacteria levels. So we'll incorporate those findings into the updated analysis. Now, while our focus is shifting towards human-related sources, we also recognize that MS4 systems still play an important role as a conveyance. They carry pollutants from urban areas into waterways, so understanding and addressing this pathway is one of the keys. We're focusing implementation on human-related sources and prioritizing areas with human fecal contamination. This approach will help us tackle the most critical issues first. We'll add guidance on using human fecal source identifiers. These identifiers can help pinpoint contamination sources more effectively. And we'll take another look at the compliance dates to make sure that they're realistic. I want to reiterate that today's discussion is about big picture, and the specifics for each of these sections will come later in the process. All right, now that you know what's changing, let's talk about how we might approach these updates. There's three ways we can approach this. We can update one TMDL at a time, which could be easier to manage, but could take longer overall. We could update both TMDLs at the same time, which would streamline the process and ensure consistency across both TMDLs, but it might require more resources up front. Or we can update and combine both TMDLs into one document. This would consolidate the two TMDLs into a single document, potentially simplifying implementation and compliance, but it may require a more complex analysis. As we consider the updates and these approaches, it's important to understand what CEQA requires us to evaluate during this process. So let's take a look at that next. This slide summarizes what's in scope for our CEQA analysis and what's not. First, what we will consider: reasonably foreseeable methods of compliance, basically the actions needed to meet the TMDL, the revised TMDL. Environmental impacts, both direct and indirect effects on resources like water, soil, air, and habitat. Mitigation measures, ways to reduce or avoid those impacts. and alternatives, different strategies or approaches to achieve the same goal. Now, what we won't cover: changes already analyzed in previous studies, or speculative changes. In other words, things we can't reasonably anticipate or predict. With that in mind, let's look at how CEQA categorizes impacts and what those categories mean for our analysis. CEQA uses 4 impact levels. First, potentially significant. These are major changes that require detailed analysis. Next, less than significant with mitigation are impacts that can be reduced through specific measures. Then less than significant, minor effects that don't require much intervention. And finally, no impact, where there's no measurable change at all. Understanding these categories helps us decide what needs more study and what can be addressed through mitigation. Now, let's take a look at how this translates into the scoping outcomes. There are 3 possible outcomes to CEQA scoping. First, we may confirm that the previous analyses are still valid and sufficient. This would be the fastest path forward since no changes would be needed. Second, we might find that minor updates are required, such as adding new data, clarifying points, or adjusting for current conditions. While this option adds some time to the process, it generally doesn't cause major delays and ensures that our documentation remains up to date and is accurate. Or third, we may find that significant new issues or impacts, and if that's the case, a full revision or new analysis would be needed. This is the most time-intensive option and could significantly extend the timeline, but it's necessary if major changes are required. Your input helps us decide which path to take. The sooner we can identify these issues, the better we can plan for timing and keep things moving more efficiently. So now that we know the 3 possible outcomes, what happens next? So right now we are here at the CEQA scoping stage. This is where we gather input early and identify potential issues before diving into the detailed analysis. Every comment you share with us during this stage is reviewed and documented. Your feedback helps us spot key issues, refine what we study, and make sure that important topics are addressed in the staff report. In short, what you tell us today really does shape the direction of this process. So what happens after CEQA scoping? We'll take everything we've heard and we'll start drafting the staff report, which would include a CEQA checklist and environmental analysis. That work is anticipated to kick off in the spring. Once the drafts are ready, they'll go through a peer review and a public comment period. You'll also have another chance to weigh in on the draft staff report, including the environmental analysis, when the documents go before the board for approval. As we wrap up, I want to stress how important your input is to this process. Comments are due by March 6th, and you can submit those by mail or by email. Please include the project ID so we can ensure that they're properly routed. And I do want to point out that we will not be preparing a response to comments document for CEQA scoping. We're also planning to bring together an external work group. This will be a structured forum where interested parties can share concerns, ask questions, and provide feedback throughout the process. If you're interested in being part of that work group, you can go ahead and email me directly, preferably by March 31st, but that's not a hard deadline. I just want to get the list going so that we can set up meetings when we're ready. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the goal of CEQA scoping is to gather your input on 4 key areas. Here's a quick reminder of what we're asking you for. Actions or measures that might be taken to meet TMDL requirements. Environmental effects we should study when these actions are implemented. Mitigation measures that could minimize those effects. And any alternatives or different approaches we should consider. With that, I will open it up for discussion. If you are here in the room, you can just raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you so that everyone, including our online participants, can hear you. And for our online participants, feel free to raise your virtual hand or drop your questions into the chat.
Hi, thank you. I'm Neil Sering, County of San Diego. I had a question on the first, you said there were those like kind of three options of how you wanted to like proceed with the two TMDLs. I was just curious, is there like a preference on the board's end of which option you would take, or is it still kind of neutral?
I shut myself out. We're still, that's one of the things we're still evaluating. But if you have any feedback on or thoughts on that, we definitely welcome that.
We're only party to the 20 beaches TMDL, and the other two aren't in our jurisdiction. So I don't really have comments on that one per se, but yeah.
Okay.
Just curious.
Thank you. I'll go back to the last one.
Hi, Christine Tolchin, County of San Diego Watershed Protection Program. Just to follow up on Neil's question, that you're neutral in which path, which decision you make, 1, 2, and 3. When is that decision going to be made, and what's going to influence how you're going to make that decision? Are you waiting till you have the comments from everybody and then making a decision from there? Or is there going to be more feedback?
Well, we'd like to see what comes in as part of the comments for CEQA scoping.
Okay, and you want us to comment on that specifically in our response to comments?
Well, these are the things that I'm asking for feedback on, but if you want to provide your thoughts on how you think we should approach the updates, yeah, definitely.
And do you have any schedule that you would predict for each of the 3 options?
Ooh, no, not yet. As far as a time frame?
That might help.
Okay.
Because, TMDL deadlines are coming quickly, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you have something? Are there any questions?
Hi, Lisa Zwatsky, Dana Point. This external work group, would that be a mechanism just to keep involved and know what's going on? Or are you looking for a smaller group of like very active participants? Sometimes your group gets too big, but would this be the right venue just to keep up to date on all this stuff as well, if you can't be an active participant?
I think if you're just looking for general updates, we are going to be sending information through, like, if you're signed up for the email, the list, what we call list, you'll be getting updates through there. But if you want to be more involved in the process, then it would be beneficial to be part of the work group.
Okay.
John Penn, Atkins Realis, a consultant. I have 2 questions. The first one is, since the last CEQA process, probably 2 major events happened. One is the adoption of bacteria provision. So one of the items for CEQA, I think you mentioned to update the numeric target. It's always central to any TMDLs. So what is the first question is, what is your vision to put the bacteria provisions into this TMDL, whatever format it's going to be? The second question is, I heard that there will be focus on human sources. There are some very impactful regional studies in San Diego. And recently there is this San Diego region IO that SCORP did. And last week there was a work group to talk about the exfiltration issues that probably will go on for a little bit. So how that human source will be factored into the implementation plan. Maybe it's too early to talk in the CEQA, but it's something that I just want to see how the board staff envision that get into this effort.
Yeah, that part, the implementation specifics is going to come in the next step. I think as far as the statewide bacteria objectives, they also went through their own CEQA process. So if you're asking, I think, whether that would make a difference to the level of CEQA review that we have to do, is that kind of what you're getting at? Like, well, now there's new standards. How would that affect the CEQA analysis?
CEQA and the TNDL itself. It's pretty fundamental.
Yeah, so as far as CEQA, I think we could potentially rely on the CEQA that was done for the statewide bacteria objectives. And as far as the other details, that's going to come, that's the next phase.
Hi, Ted Von Bittner, WSP USA for Dana Point. As part of the CEQA analysis, we also contemplate issues in the original team deal that need to be corrected? Or are you starting from this point going forward? So there's no retroactive considerations. It's just going to be whatever happens now going forward. And also, like, if you change the standards to say E. coli, what does that mean for the dry weather and wet weather TMDLs in terms of schedule, compliance, numeric targets, that kind of stuff?
Well, the compliance schedule is one of the things that we're going to reevaluate, right? Once we start really the bulk of this work, that's going to be one of the things that we're going to need to look at. I think they're great questions, but I think they're also a little bit further in the process. And so that is going to come in the next step. Yeah. We're getting there. I promise.
Regarding Christine Tolchin, County San Diego, regarding public comments and response to comments, I know she said you're not going to be doing a written response to comments, but considering them. Will the public comments, will that phase happen, response to public comments happen in the EIR at the time when it is brought to the regional board hearing?
There will be, when we bring, so that part will be included when we release the draft documents. The environmental document will be a part of that. So there'll be two opportunities to comment, right? One, when we release the draft documents, and then also when we bring the documents to the board for approval. Yeah, and that CEQA checklist and environmental analysis is part of the staff report. Guys, it's like 9:30. This must be like the fastest CEQA scoping meeting in the world.
Not a question, but I actually just like to be supportive of this whole process from the standpoint, and we really support where you're going with this, especially taking the human source kind of approach. We've been at this for a long time. We were kind of a lead administrative agency on the IO, so we've learned a lot, I think, over the years. The county in particular is like, I think we've done 2,000-3,000 different screenings using human indicators. And I think now we're learning a lot about where these sources are coming from. And, as an MS4 agency, we've been spending millions and millions of dollars, committing, millions of dollars to structural projects in the end that now we're learning probably won't work as how we originally thought. And so I just really, we support this kind of shift to this human source approach, which from an environmental standpoint, I think will get us out of building some of these big projects that might have more adverse impacts, to the environment than taking like a strategic approach and say working with, the sanitation agencies and other, people that we know are contributing. So just supportive and really want to be engaged along the way. The county, Orange County and the city have done a lot of work on this, previously, and we put out a paper in like 2017. So we're waiting and willing and ready to start working and engage with you on it. So just, thank you, fully supportive and ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you for that. One last check. No? Any other questions, comments, feedback?
As you update the source analysis, is it, could it be that there's going to be responsible parties added to this TMDL?
I mean, there could be. I'm trying to think of. I mean, we could specifically name parties. Right now, the TMDL, if you're not named, the assumption is you're still part of the TMDL areas and you have a zero waste load allocation, right? But if we're looking for clarification, we can certainly do that.
John Payne, Atkins Realis again. So just to follow up with your response to my previous question, you said there is a CEQA process ongoing with statewide bacteria provisions, or
that happened already, right? So they
already.
had to go through CEQA scoping when they started that particular project.
Right. So in terms of the impact level, I didn't track that effort. Is it the EIR level, or what is the impact level, or it's just a regulation and
it's similar to this. So the basin planning it's a certified regulatory program, so it's a CEQA equivalent. So it's not exactly it's basically what we're doing here.
Okay.
Yeah, same process. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can share that information with you if you're interested in seeing it. Any other questions, feedback? Any questions from our feedback from our staff? No? Last check-in. No? Okay. All right. Very quiet. Okay, well, with that, I guess I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate that. We really appreciate your feedback and your input on this. If you want more information as we move forward, please check the project webpage. This is where I'll be adding more information as it becomes available. This is also where you will find a link to subscribe to the emails, and I will be sending information there for meetings and any other opportunity to participate. If you have any questions after you leave today, feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact information is here. And with that, I think I will conclude this meeting. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. That was the fastest meeting ever. We should have timed, well, 9:30. You guys want to stick around? We're here till 11. No.